Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us from. It's a beautiful morning. Today we are going to learn a bit more about dyslexia. So today's topic is demystifying dyslexia. Now, dyslexia is a condition that many parents are not aware of. Sometimes their children are slow learners, while others blame schools for seemingly slow development. What would you do if your child was spelling the word boy as doy? Today we have a very renowned photographer who has thrived in being dyslexic. So in this case we don't say despite being dyslexic, we say because of dyslexia. Now to introduce to you our guest, I'm going to allow him introduce himself. Remember to reach us on our various social media platforms at DGTV on Facebook, at DGTV on Instagram, and at DGTV on our YouTube platform. If you need to ask us any question, you can also reach us on our SMS number 0791 300 105. Again, 0791 300 105. Over to you, Aaron. Kindly introduce yourself to us.
My name is Habari Za Dgtv. Basically, I'm a photographer based in Nairobi, but available to travel anywhere in this wonderful world of ours. Yeah, so I've been doing photography professionally since 2016.
Good.
Yes, as for now, I'm in the process of rebranding my company and rebranding myself. Just from photography now into a production company.
All right.
Yes.
All right. That's interesting. All right. So just to bring it down to our topic of today,
Yes.
what is that one thing that many of your clients do not know about you?
Many of my clients don't know I'm dyslexic. We don't interact to that certain point. Yeah, so they just know basically what I'll be doing for them, and just a simple picture of who I am, not intricate things.
Interesting. So now to break it down to us, we've learned about dyslexia, so we know it's a learning challenge. So I'm going to hand it over to a very professional guest to kindly elaborate for us what is the neuroscience about dyslexia? How does it work?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Effie, for having us here. It's yet another Tuesday that we are here to talk about learning disabilities. We started last week, and we say that dyslexia is one of the learning disabilities.
Yeah.
And today we are here to demystify dyslexia, because there are many, many myths surrounding dyslexia.
Very true.
And I think we need to educate our viewers more about dyslexia. So as we said last week, dyslexia is a learning disability, and mainly affects the reading, the spelling, the writing, and the comprehension skills. Although dyslexia also co-occurs with other conditions, we talked about dyscalculia, which is also a struggle with understanding maths concepts.
Yeah.
But I think today we'll narrow down on dyslexia as a reading disability. There are many myths that surround dyslexia, and I'm sure we'll be focusing that more. But it's important for our viewers to appreciate that sometimes a child may be born with dyslexia, but there are no physical signs at birth that would tell that a child is dyslexic. However, as the child starts developing and hitting the milestones, there are some milestones that will be delayed, that delay is a telltale sign that probably there might be problems with reading, and that may be dyslexia once the child goes to school. So one of the common delays that most children with dyslexia will present with is delay in talking or just understanding the language. So you realize that a child may delay acquiring speech, and once that speech comes, it is sometimes the speech may be a bit not very clear. I don't want to say impaired, but you may find a child is interchanging the order of sounds in a word. So for example, maybe the word animal. You may hear the child saying aminal. And as you said, the B and the D. So the boy becomes doy. So those are some of the telltale signs. A few parents have also reported their children walked late, and basically the developmental milestones were delayed. So that's already a telltale sign, but dyslexia is formally identified or diagnosed once the child reaches school, because that's when now, since we said it's a learning challenge, it's a school problem that is now accurately identified in school.
Great.
Yes.
All right, back to you, Aaron. So among the factors that Ms. Esther has mentioned, are there, at what age or at what particular point did it hit you that you could be probably having a learning challenge?
For me, let's say, not me noticing, but my mom knowing. Because it's inherited thing. Because her dad had it, then she has it, then now to me. So, I mean, I think in the back of her mind, she was thinking now, because in her family, she's the only one who has it. Then it comes down to now her children. Now, maybe in the second one, now it's now me. Then just what she can now, you know, her having experience, her having it, now coming to now having birth to me, now seeing certain things that my firstborn brother didn't have. I can say from an early age. You I used to hear about, but I was not really comprehending what that is. So for a while, no, coming to around age 5, 6, 7, or maybe 8, 9, and then to start understanding what this is, because now you get to go to class. Like you look at words, you've done the alphabet. Is it the what are this?
The alphabet.
Not even the alphabet.
The vowel sounds.
You know the vowel alphabets, but you can't really comprehend them in a proper way. Then when you go to the vowels, you're like, then you're wondering why is it so hard to combine all this together. So for me, mostly, I think for me it's only when I can comprehend very well. But now reading the words, but I have no problem understanding when I'm reading something.
All right. Back to you, Esther, again, to just elaborate for us what he has said. He has said he had challenges probably differentiating or knowing how to pronounce certain alphabetical words. How do you think the dyslexic brain works that impedes them from being able to, or not being able to differentiate those alphabets?
All right, very good. So dyslexia is a reading disability. Although apart from the reading skills, there are also other skills that are affected by dyslexia. I've said the spelling, the writing, the comprehension. And so what happens is that with dyslexia, the reading is affected because reading is a product of some sub skills that are involved in reading. And one of those skills are what Aaron is saying. So first of all, we have the letters of the alphabet, the 26 letters, A to Z. Then those letters form sounds. So each letter, you map a sound to each letter. So for example, if it's the letter A, it changes to sound A.
All right.
If it's B, it becomes B.
Yes.
If it's C, it changes to K.
Okay.
So what happens with the dyslexic brain, and that's the hallmark of dyslexia, we call this phonological processing.
All right.
So in a layman's language, what phonological processing means is that a child, once the child joins school, that's the first thing that they are taught. Identification of, recognition of the alphabet, and then the sounds. Or some would start with the sounds, then the alphabets come later. So being able to, so there's the function of the brain that is involved in reading. And because there's what we call the language system in the brain. So the lowest level, and it's like a pyramid. So at the bottom of the pyramid is what we call the phonological processing. So it's like the sound factory. That is where once the brain sees a word, it does not see it as a whole word. So it sees as a string of letters. Then once it's sent to the brain, the brain now processes those letters into sounds. Because when we are reading, we don't use letters. We use sounds. And that's why when you see a word cat, you're not going to hear the C there. You're not going to hear the A. And you're not going to hear the T, although T and T are almost similar. So once the brain sees those strings of letters, it processes them into sounds to be able to do something we call decoding. Decoding is reading. It's that whole process of coding the letters into sounds so that one is able to read. So that whole process is where there is usually a disruption. So the child now really struggles, or rather the brain of a dyslexic person struggles with that whole process. That's why you'll find that their reading is labored. So it will be slow and laborious. And because of that struggle, what now is usually affected is the comprehension. But if you read that same story or that sentence to the same child, they're able to comprehend. But if they are left to read on their own, it's a big struggle. Then from there now, from the sound level, the next level is now finding meaning or attaching meaning to what they are learning. We call that the semantic level, attaching meaning. That's also another area that is affected. So you may actually have a child who is reading, because dyslexia presents differently for different people. So not all dyslexics struggle with reading. We have some that will read very well, but it's just what we call mechanical reading. So they can decode, but they're not attaching meaning to what they are reading. So processing that written information to give it meaning and comprehension also becomes a challenge. But when you have uneven skills, uneven abilities in the reading skills, spelling skills, that is a hallmark of dyslexia.
Interesting.
Yes.
So I love that everything that you've said, Aaron mentioned. So again, I move back to you. Now that you mentioned you had challenges being able to read, is there a point in your schooling that you ever felt anxious, or you probably stepped out because you didn't want to read and allow other kids to see that you're struggling with reading? Sorry.
For me, the good thing about it, when it comes to my schooling, you have a parent who's aware of your struggles and stuff. Them going through the what can I say? Them going through the effort to go to school and tell them this and this, having the conversations with teachers and stuff before. Now, if you're like in a school that teachers don't know about that, because most teachers go just the training for what do they call it, normal training. Then there are those ones who go for special
training.
So when people who haven't gone for special, they have to be at least what they call it,
prompted
or just being given the information of this and that. So them being told that, them coming to understand about that, them at least knowing so much when it comes to this language studies like English and Kiswahili. The struggles were really that. So just thank God for the teachers that I had who are very understandable. From when I was in different schools, those ones really used to understand. And mostly like I wouldn't read, but I would what do I say? After the reading, now I'm going around like what have we understood from whatever is happening and stuff.
All right. You've talked about challenges. Would you kindly tell us about just a few of the ones that you experienced?
In school?
Yeah.
Okay, now I think I don't know what the challenges, because challenges basically, one of the challenges is basically you'd have to do more than most other people would have to do. It's like you'd have to take more interest in, like, when it comes to the languages, have maybe a tutor in the evening to go through whatever you read today, or whatever you're going to read in the future.
Okay.
Just to be able to catch up.
All right. Yeah. All right. Which brings us to the point of finding a good support system while at it, because we realize that not all children fall in the hands of a person who understands. What would you like to say about that?
All right, very good. So I think we are speaking to the fact that we have a very low awareness about this condition.
Okay.
And I think that's the essence of this show.
Yeah.
So that we are able to give as much information and create as much awareness as we can.
Okay.
And probably even maybe stepping back to something that Haron has said.
All right.
That he is dyslexic. His mother is dyslexic.
Yeah.
The grandfather, that's the maternal grandfather, was dyslexic.
Yeah.
So that brings us to a very, very important point on what could be one of the causes of dyslexia.
Yeah.
Although we actually don't call them causes, we call them risk factors.
Okay.
Because we still don't have a one known cause.
Right.
Because there are many risk factors that would predispose someone to dyslexia. So in the case of Haron, this is a typical case of hereditary dyslexia that is very genetic. So you can see that gene has been passed on from the maternal grandfather to his mother and now to him. Yes, and so that's one of the risk factors, that is highly genetic. So if one person in the family tree has dyslexia, chances are it will be passed on to another member of the family.
Okay.
I think in their case, it's very consistent.
Okay.
So you can, because their cases, maybe if the grandfather has it, one of his kids may not necessarily have it, then it may jump to
to the next generation,
to a grandson, or even a great grandson. But you can see the progression in the family.
Okay.
So that's a very good example of what we mean by hereditary dyslexia. Of course, there are also other factors that will predispose one to dyslexia. There's also the primary dyslexia, and this one is also born with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So back to your question. Yes. So I think consistently we have said that we are in an education system where children with dyslexia are not identified early. And the fact that dyslexia has no physical signs until the child goes to school and the struggles start. I think we have systemic challenges in our system and in the way we train our teachers. Because as Haron has rightly put it, when our teachers are being trained for teacher training, what we call the pre-service training before they go to teach, if you're going to end up in the mainstream schools, so there's really not much information on knowledge or training that the teachers are exposed to when it comes to children with learning disabilities, and especially specific disabilities. I know there's probably a component of it, but very, very shallow. So they don't have the in-depth knowledge or know-how about dyslexia. And so what happens is that because when children with dyslexia start off school in the regular schools, no child is going to start probably in a special school or a specialty school. So they start in the regular schools, and it's when now these challenges start manifesting. That is when now the teachers start noticing that there's a problem. But unfortunately, most of them are not well equipped to support this child. And I've seen now what happens is that now the parents will keep changing the children's schools because they're thinking it's this teacher who has a problem, or it's the school. Then they move the child to the next school, and the same story is repeated.
Yeah.
It's very heartbreaking when I receive kids whose parents, even a 10-year-old, who is supposed to be in grade 4, and you hear like they've been to 7, 8 schools.
Yeah.
So, so I imagine if teachers already had some information that this could be dyslexia,
True.
and they would advise the parent, have the child assessed, have the child identified if they could have a learning challenge,
okay.
so that interventions can start early.
All right.
Because early intervention is very, very crucial. These are brain-based issue. The brain-based response to interventions or better when the child is still younger, or rather when the brain is still younger, because of something we call brain plasticity.
Okay.
So the outcomes are better and faster when the child is younger, when the early interventions are started.
True.
And so I think, in my opinion, now addressing to government, because this could be a policy issue, is that at least let's introduce an aspect of special education in the training, and especially on the hidden disabilities, the invisible disabilities, because they have now become very prevalent. We have more and more cases of children with dyslexia, autism, and all the learning disabilities that we talked about last week. And it's only fair that the teachers know what to do once these children come into their hands.
All right.
Yes.
Great. You talked about interventions. Before I get back to Haron and probably tell us what type of interventions he experienced, what are some of the interventions that you would advise a teacher who's probably watching for them to take, given that they didn't pass through the special education training?
All right, very good. So that's why the assessment is very important. So even if it's not the teacher assessing, once a teacher notices that the child is struggling, and the struggle is very, very consistent, and maybe even with whatever interventions they are putting in place, because what happens in the regular schools, mostly the teachers will try to create some time and see this child, maybe break time early in the morning, and give them that extra help that they need. But sometimes I say that may be what we call a band-aid approach. It's like bandaging a wound without washing it and healing it. It will still it will still yes. And maybe before you realize the wound is already septic and we're already amputating the leg. But so that's the same, that analogy is the same with children with dyslexia, because the moment you realize that there is a problem, so assessment is the first thing, because this leads to diagnosis, and it also informs the appropriate interventions that will be put in place. And some of these interventions, of course, is what we call accommodations. Accommodations and remediation. So we have evidence-based programs, reading programs that really support learners with dyslexia, because they target the brain. They try to rewire the brain. I already said dyslexia is a brain-based issue on how the brain processes written and sometimes even spoken information. So we have programs that actually we call them structured literacy. Because remember, we've said it's a language-based problem. So it affects the acquisition of the literacy skills, the reading, the writing, the spelling. So we have programs out there that teachers, and mostly now these are used by specialist teachers, but any teacher trained on them will still be able to support. So that is one thing. The other thing, that's now on the remediation part, using an approach or a program, like we have an approach called the Orton Gillingham. So we have many reading programs, reading and spelling programs that have been developed based on this approach that teachers can use for remediation. So the other intervention is what we call accommodations, because you're either remediating or accommodating. So accommodating is basically leveling the playing ground. So if you have a child with dyslexia in class and 20 more without dyslexia, and you're giving this assignment, and it's a timed assessment, assignment, and you've given them 10 minutes. So give the one with dyslexia 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes. So that way you level the playing ground, because Also, we have processing speed issues, so this child will definitely be slow. Still on the homework, if you're giving 30 questions to the learners, this one with dyslexia, you can reduce the number of questions and probably give 10 less, so they end up with 20 when everyone has 30. So that's an accommodation. The other accommodation is something we call differentiation. Because this child may not be at the level, they are always not at grade level. So if it's a class, if it's a grade 2 teacher and you're teaching grade 2 content, chances are that child with dyslexia is not at grade 2 level. He could be at grade 2 level in some areas, but in most areas he may be below. Probably grade 1 level or even below. So when the teacher is giving work or teaching the content, there has to be differentiation. So you either maybe go a topic lower where the child is, so you're going to the level of that child so that you're differentiating. Or if it's the same topic, you've got to differentiate the way you're going to deliver. So probably this one with dyslexia need more visuals. So the same content, because abstract things do not make sense for dyslexic, so they're highly visual. So use visual aids like the videos, the photos, diagrams, posters. That really helps in processing information for dyslexic. Yes, so those are some of the few interventions that, and of course, technology. Yes, integrating technology. I've talked about the videos, the photos, creating digital content as opposed to notes, because these are not talk and chalk children. They are not even textbook children. So now with technology and having so many apps out there and many digital programs that can be used, that will really go a long way to help.
All right.
Yes.
Great. We are learning a lot. And I'm going to move back to you, Aaron. Growing up, how was it like for you? What was your experience like with your teachers? Is there at one point there's a teacher who probably did not understand your condition and inappropriately and gave you extra work or probably punished you?
For me, I didn't have so much struggle in school because going back to the fact that was my mom, I had the support from my mom and the support from her also. She went and did special ed. So, wherever I went, people were well aware of what was, and I didn't have so much. I would not have had so much struggles because basically of what my mother did.
So you're saying your mom preempted them that the child I'm bringing to you has dyslexia, and these are the things you need to put into. All right, good. I'm just wondering about a child whose parent is probably not quite aware as Aaron's mother was. And you realize that some parents probably tend to be frustrated and end up even punishing instead of supporting the child or getting to understand what exactly is going on. I'll move it to you as a parent and also as an educationist. What advice would you give to them?
All right. Yeah, so I think Aaron was very fortunate to have a mother who was already aware about dyslexia, being dyslexic herself, and she went out of her way. So Aaron was my student, by the way, so I've known him since he was a small boy, so at least I have a lot of insights about his academic journey, his achievements, and also his mother. And so I know the mother was very, very supportive, and I think maybe having she was reliving her experiences as a dyslexic through her son. And I can only imagine those days then, there was not a lot of information and support. So I know she made it upon herself to support Aaron. And I think that's how fortunate Aaron has been, even ending up with the right schools that, of course, are in a position to support him. And that's why today we have this prolific photographer, because the school gave him all the support and nurtured their talents. I think last time we talked about the strengths of dyslexic, that though they struggle with reading, and all matters academics, God has a way of compensating them. True. And they are very, very highly talented. So, of course, not all mothers have the privilege to have the information and the awareness that Harun's mother had. Yeah. And I'm speaking to that mother probably back in the village, or even in the urban setting, because I interact a lot even with parents who are here in Nairobi, and they hear about dyslexia the first time I assess their child. So they still, awareness is still very, very low. But as I have always said, as a parent, if your child is not developing normally in all areas, we've talked about the delays in developmental milestones. If, again, the child goes to school and the struggle in learning begins, so we are in an information age, so of course we have Dr. Google, but I keep saying not everything that is there is to be trusted, but at least that can be a point of reference. Yeah. And once you confirm from there that probably what you're seeing could be a deeper problem than the signs that you're already seeing, the next thing, of course, is to seek assessment, as I've said, so that early intervention can begin. So it's not like back then, maybe in the days of Mama Harun, when we were not in an information age. Yeah. So, and again, even the government has really gone out of its way to ensure that we have the assessment centers. So any county office, education office, if a parent walks in there, they'll be directed into what we call the EACs. Those are government assessment centers, or even now private centers like us, and the child would be assessed and supported. So then again, once that is done, it's also important that the parent, it's one thing to have the diagnosis. It's one thing to know that your child is dyslexic, but now it's going to be a lot of work to ensure that your child gets the right support. Yeah. So one of the things I tell parents is that you automatically now become your child's advocate. True. You heard what Harun said about the mother, so you got to go to school, tell the teachers, this is the assessment, the professionals have found out that my child has this and this learning challenge, and this is the way to support this child. And so as a parent, attend those meetings, attend those IEP conferences, just ensure that you're part of your child's academic journey. Sometimes parents, and I am one of them, maybe due to frustrations, we tend to get, I know, because it's an emotional roller coaster, supporting a child who is struggling, but just being empathetic, not sympathetic, just being empathetic, that you still have high expectations for your child, you have set goals for them, but walk with them to be able to achieve those goals. Because sometimes when we become too harsh, we are beating the child, we are scolding the child, we are yelling at the child because they are taking long. I've had parents telling me we sleep past midnight doing homework, and they are all crying. One even told me, when it becomes too late and I can see the frustrations of my child, I end up doing the homework myself. I use the left hand to change my handwriting so that the teacher will not know it's me, the parent, who did the homework. Honestly, we don't need to subject the teacher, I mean the children, to all that. And that's why I said, as a teacher, the interventions are accommodations, reduce the homework, give more time. In fact, if that homework is due tomorrow for the rest of the children, probably this one, it can be the day after tomorrow. So parents, don't give up. If Mama Harun gave up on Harun, he wouldn't be where he is. So it's the support that you give your child, because there are two places that you can either make or break a dyslexic child, at home and in school. So if those two environments are enabling, if they are conducive, there's no reason why the child should not thrive.
Great. Yes. We are going to go on a short commercial break. Do not touch that dial. When we get back, we are going to learn more about some of the dyslexic myths that we are probably having. Remember, again, you can follow us and reach us on our social media platforms at DGTV Facebook, at DGTV on Instagram, and at DGTV on YouTube. See you then.
As God was creating the world, He made sure that everything looked good. Before He would create something else, He always looked at it and said, "It is good."
You should ask yourself, what is the purpose of this relationship that I am in?
Man was made naturally and spiritually productive by God for a purpose.
I have my blessing. I have my healing. I have my greatness. I have my power. And it's all inside of me in Christ.
We often ask ourselves, what are some of the secrets behind success? And how do people become successful in business?
Be sure to catch Money Monday to learn habits of a millionaire's mind and how you can apply them to your advantage. We shall bring you bold entrepreneurs with the most important lessons, hoping that you will find your inspiration and motivation for your journey towards success.
Join me each and every single Monday from 9 to 10 a.m. only on DGTV, #Demarcating Our Domain.
Christian Community Church invites you to our Sunday service. We reach the lost, build community, grow disciples, serve our neighbors, and in all things, worship the Almighty God. Join us for Sunday services from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. You can also catch us live at DGTV and on Facebook at DGTV Kenya. We are located at Uzuri Institute grounds, Thika. God bless you as you come.
Welcome back. I'm glad you did not move an inch. So we continue to tackle the topic as we demystify dyslexia. So I'm going to go back to our guest and ask him, what are some of the coping mechanisms that you embraced growing up? Because it wasn't an easy journey, was it?
Not really an easy journey.
Mm-hmm.
Coping mechanisms.
Yeah, probably in layman's language, what are those things, once you realize that you were not able to read? Given a point, you were put on the spotlight. How do you go about it?
Put on the spotlight?
To read.
Just like that?
Yes.
If you put me on the spotlight, you're not with me.
Okay.
Like, I'm not those people who you just put on a spotlight.
Mm.
Who put me on a spotlight, just tell you, no, I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, as simple as that. We don't go, do it in the British way. We don't go around in corners.
Yeah.
If you didn't tell me earlier, no, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's a good coping mechanism, because in that way, nobody would look at the dyslexic part of you. Back to you, Miss Esther. Let's say a child he or she has already been identified or diagnosed that they have dyslexia. What are some of the coping mechanisms? Let's say a child has been put on the spotlight, right, to read. So I'm thinking of a situation where the teacher doesn't understand. what are those things? I'd say a child would probably decide, let me step out, or will say, let me go to the washroom. What are some of the ones that you've come across being a dyslexic coach and probably an educationist?
Yes, so that's very typical of dyslexics, and we actually call it avoidance behavior.
Okay.
And actually, maybe today or next time, we may look at also the mental health issues that come with being dyslexic.
Okay.
And so aggressive behavior, avoidance behavior is one of the coping mechanisms that children or persons with dyslexia adopt. So like Haroon has just said, if you put him on the spot to read and you had not prepared him, so he will avoid, he'll actually refuse. So that's one of the avoidance behavior that we are talking about.
Okay.
As you've rightly put it, other children will know, you know, like when you have the round robin, teachers use the round robin method, where every child reads on their turn. So definitely for a child with dyslexia, when they know there are two people away, that's when they will excuse themselves to go to the toilet and or even go into a cough and just make sure that they are not reading. We also have so the teachers will either use the round robin or what we call the popcorn. So that is even worse, because the popcorn, the teacher will just call randomly. Okay. Effie, Harold. So the child doesn't even know when it's their turn. And that really makes them very, very anxious. So it helps that the teacher is very sensitive to such children in the class. Because already, if you know a child is struggling, so it does not help. You actually put that child into disservice if you request them to read aloud, because you know most likely they are going to be a subject of ridicule. They will be made fun of, and the fact that they know they're on the spot and everybody's paying attention to their challenges, they become very anxious. So we advise teachers that you can avoid to have that child read, and you'll have discussed with the child and you tell them, so even if I don't ask you to read, it's not that I'm sidelining you or I'm discriminating against you, it's because I know you're not comfortable about it. Or just have a dialogue with that child and ask, would you like to read? Or today we'll be reading aloud, and I will ask you to read. So probably make sure that, because in most cases what teachers do is that if it's a passage or a text, it's in paragraphs. So please don't ask that child to read the longest paragraph. Some paragraphs are so brief, maybe 2 sentences. So maybe you can have first prepare the child in advance that I'll ask you to read, but probably you read the shortest paragraph. And you reassure that child. But also, the teacher also has to be an advocate, just like a parent is being an advocate for this child. The teacher also has to be an advocate of this child to the peers in class, and make sure that the teacher does not entertain other children making fun of these children or ridiculing these children. Actually, they become their peer buddies, where they are actually also part of the support system of these children who are struggling, because that's the only way to go about inclusion. So inclusion is not just merely physically having that child present in that class physically. It's ensuring that everybody is a part and parcel of the support system of this child, and even the teacher actually also informing the other children that this child, the child may be struggling in reading, but that doesn't make him less. The teacher may not have to go into the labels that this is a dyslexic child. That's not important. But they can explain that John struggles with reading, and so it's upon us that we all support him in his reading. And so if the teacher assigns buddies, peer buddies or learning buddies in the class, so you realize that everybody becomes accepting. Just like we have a child in the same class who maybe is on a wheelchair, and every child wants to help in pushing the child, the wheelchair. So the same goes also to the children who are struggling. So yes, so teachers have to be very, very sensitive, because in most cases teachers have amplified even the problem, because when the child attempts to read and maybe they are not reading fluently, they are not reading accurately, so teachers tend to make comments that are really, you know, disparaging comments, and the kids pick those words. The kids pick those attitudes that we have towards the children who are different, and that's what they're going to perpetuate or propagate. But if we are accepting as teachers, if we are accommodating, definitely the children will also pick the same vibes.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's, I'm really learning a lot. So now I need us to focus on the creativity part of being dyslexic. So back to you, Harun.
Yes.
What is that one thing that you feel you're very good at that no one can beat you at it?
So many things.
Okay.
Now to narrow it down what I'm doing. I really enjoy doing photography.
Okay.
The enjoyment part is actually traveling. Never being in one place for a week or more. Always being in different areas, going to see different cultures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing thing. That's when, like, photography is number one. Like, I've got two very big passions.
Yeah.
One is things to do with automotive.
Okay.
Or just mechanical stuff. I really enjoy doing such things. So yeah, those are things that I'm passionate about.
Okay. Good to know. I love that you mentioned the technicality part of the passionate things that you are about, which moves us to how is it that a dyslexic brain is very creative, and the passion and the determination that a person with dyslexia has is not at the level at which mine is. How does the brain of a dyslexic?
Okay. Yes, so you had asked about the neuroscience.
Yes.
Yes, the science behind the brain of a dyslexic.
Yeah.
So the brain is divided into two parts. We call them hemispheres.
Okay.
So we have the right and the left hemisphere. And the brain has different functions. So there are those functions that are controlled by the left side of the brain and others on the right side of the brain.
Okay.
So when it comes to the reading, where we have said that's where the challenge and the struggles are, that's on the left side of the brain.
Yeah.
But the spatial skills, the creativity, the design, and everything creative when it comes to dyslexic is on the right side.
Okay.
And the fact that dyslexic are mainly right dominant, they are right brain dominant. So it's their right side of the brain that is stronger, that is dominant, and that's where all these skills and strengths are controlled.
Okay.
So you realize because of that, in fact, some brain imaging have shown that most dyslexics have even a bigger right hemisphere than the left hemisphere.
Wow.
So there's a differentiation in terms of the structure and the function of the brain when it comes to when you compare the right and the left.
Okay.
So that is what predisposes them to all these strengths.
Okay.
And that's why you will find that most dyslexics go into careers that are in creativity. So they're either photographers, they're in film, they're fashion designers, they're architects, and everything creative. They're also very good in business because once they bring the same creativity, so their entrepreneurial skills are also very, very good. So, and that's why people like Richard Branson have really thrived in being very successful entrepreneurs. And they keep saying they are made by dyslexia, powered by dyslexia.
Yeah.
So that's the irony, that the same brain that is really struggling in reading and learning is very prolific and very strong in other areas.
Okay.
And now, again, back to the parents, the kind of support that you give your child. Start identifying those strengths and talents early.
Yeah.
But sometimes what we do as parents, we stifle the growth of those talents. So if a child is always speaking, because they also make very good musicians. Last week I met a young girl, and she told me, I want to be a pop star. She's dyslexic, and she told me, I want to be a young pop star. And so you find that there are things that kids start doing at an early age, and it's already speaking to their talents. But what do we do as parents? Stop what you're doing.
Focus on your
education. Can you go and read? But you don't know, you're in the process, you're killing something that is within that child, that probably that is what their career is going to be. So it's good that we identify and actually know that for children who are on the dyslexia profile, their lifeline is on those skills, it's on those talents, it's on those strengths. So take your child to a school where all those skills are nurtured, and you as a parent invest in those talents, because that may be what will be their career path.
Great.
Yes.
So we call them dyslexic superpowers.
Yes, we call them dyslexic superpowers.
Interesting.
Yes.
So as we continue with the conversation, I need us to bust some myths for us, in as much as dyslexia is confirmed. So what you're going to do is tell me whether it's fact or fiction.
All right.
All right. Some people think dyslexia is about reading backwards. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Fiction.
Yes.
All right. Let me move to the next one. So there is a connection between dyslexia and mental health. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you kindly elaborate or explain to us how?
Yes. So I've said because of the challenges and the struggles that persons with dyslexia experience.
Okay.
And of course, this is if they are not supported very well. If you listen to Haron's story, the fact that he almost had it easy in his academic journey, he may not have been predisposed to mental health issues. And I'm not talking about mental illness or mental disorders. We are talking about mental health issues that will also affect even the typical population if you're going through stressful moments, depressful moments. So that's the same thing, because there's a lot of struggle that comes with being dyslexic. There's a lot of stigma that comes with being dyslexic. And so if these people are not supported, I say they are predisposed to mental health issues. So they'll be highly stressed. Some will even go into depression. I've talked about the avoidance behavior, aggressive behavior. Actually, some even have suicidal thoughts. There's a lot of school dropout rates among dyslexic, juvenile delinquents. If you go to most of what we call the approved schools worldwide, they call them the Boston centers worldwide, most of those children could be dyslexic or have a learning disability that was never identified. And because of the frustration, so it may be misconstrued to be a behavior issue. But this child is trying to say something that the world is not listening. I'm struggling, I need help. So if that help is not forthcoming, that's how now these other issues end up cropping up. But if the child is supported, so it may not necessarily resort to mental health issues. But if the support system is missing, just like even you and me, if you're going through something, it could be grief and loss. It could be loss of employment. So, and you do not receive the kind of support that you need to deal with the issue. Definitely, it snowballs into other mental health issues. That's exactly what happens with dyslexic.
All right.
Yes.
Ready for the last one?
Pardon?
Ready for the last
yes, and maybe before you give me the other one, let me just elaborate a bit about the other myth that dyslexia is about reading backwards. Yes, so many people have said that dyslexic read backwards. They don't read backwards, but what they do, because backwards, you're saying that they are reading from, we read from left to right. So they don't read from right to left. But what they do is that sometimes it's what we call reversals or mirror imaging of letters, or mostly letters. And that's why we have the confusion of the B and D. Because those are look-alike letters, or even P and number 9. So you'll find that the children are likely to reverse those look-alike letters.
Okay.
And so the word boy will be read as doy, bat or bad as dab.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have all those reversals, but they actually do not read backwards.
Okay.
But they have those reversals. They even have something called transposing of letters.
All
So
right.
like maybe in the word boy, so they will write BYO. So the letter that
Y
follows
comes-
comes first.
Okay.
So that's very typical.
All right.
Yes.
Great. So the last one. Some say it is more common in boys than girls. Fact or fiction?
It's fiction.
Okay.
Yes. So the gender differentiation or the gender aspect of dyslexia is there's no one gender
Yeah.
that is more predisposed to dyslexia than the other.
Okay.
But why most people think that more boys have dyslexia than girls
Yeah.
is because of the coping mechanism that you had talked about.
Yeah.
So boys naturally, typically, boys present with aggressive behavior. So what happens if a child, one of the coping mechanisms for boys is aggressive and avoidance behavior. Girls are more composed. They will actually maybe keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
They may withdraw, but rarely will they present with aggression. So boys will be aggressive, they will be hyperactive, and so their issues are more pronounced
All right.
than the girls.
All right.
But girls will still be equally affected, but I think they cope more internally. So for the boys, it's what we call externalizing behavior.
All right.
The aggression, the hyperactivity, the avoidance. For the girls, it's more internalizing. So withdrawal, and they just deal with the issues internally. However, I would still say that there could be some fact that we have more boys.
Yeah.
And that for me now is more anecdotal because even like in my school, the school population, I have more boys than girls. I even have some classes that are all boys classes with
Men's conference.
Yes, they always call it men's conference. Yeah, so but there's no research that has really like proven that we have more boys than girls. So they are both predisposed equally.
All right.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, and we still have more meets. I don't know whether there's time maybe to talk about one or two more.
Well, because of time, we will have to postpone that to our next
All right,
show.
that's fine.
We will be sure to invite you to pop some more for us.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Yes.
So as we end our conversation, I love that you're very confident about who you are, and what probably as a parting shot, what message would you give to somebody who is probably dyslexic and they feel weighed down, and yeah, you need them to believe in themselves because they have a dyslexic superpower. What message would you give them?
Funny thing is, for me, how I take life is, right now, you're on a journey. You're coming out of Nairobi, wherever you're going. For several hours, we'll be traveling. So if I'm feeling bad about something, I always think about when will I be at that place and I'll be at a positive or good environment. That's what just keeps me going. Because I cannot just continue on dwelling on where I am, but be positive and see and think about where I'm going to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. All right. Thank you very much for that. Back to you, Miss Esther. What's your parting shot for us today?
Well, my parting shot, I think based on Haron's story, and it's a success story of a person who has dyslexia and not successful despite dyslexia, as you rightly put it. Successful probably because he has dyslexia and the dyslexia superpower in him. So I think I'll address two people, persons with dyslexia themselves, that it's not all gloom and doom. Actually, if you're able to identify your dyslexic strengths and see how they'll be nurtured and developed, there's no limit to how much one can achieve with dyslexia. To the parents, so these strengths, identify them early, support your child, invest in those strengths, because that is what your child will look up to for their future, because that's the lifeline for dyslexics.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here today and educating us on all matters, and we have evidence of a very successful dyslexic. So it's also good to know that persons living with dyslexia are very, very intelligent from the conversation we've had. So thank you very much for tuning in today. Catch you again next week, same time, same place. Remember, you can always reach us on our social media platforms at DGTV, Facebook at DGTV, on Instagram at DGTV, on Twitter and at DGTV on our YouTube platform. And again, also, if you have a question or you need to reach any of our guests today, you can SMS on the number 0791 300 105. I repeat, 0791 300 105. Thank you very much. It was nice having you with us today. See you again next week, same place, same time.